What's up, everybody? It's Nesquik, aka Kidkupo with Kupokast. Just want to let you know about Anchor real quick. It's free. The creation tools are so helpful and allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They also distribute your podcast to Apple, Spotify, and so many other places. You can make money with your podcast and you don't need any minimum listeners or fans. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Check it out. What is going on, Chocobros and Moogals? This is Kidkupo with Kupokast, bringing you a fantastic guest tonight who is gracious enough to join us.
Thank you.
His name is Soldier First Class. We're very lucky to have him on a guest in the podcast tonight. So how are you doing tonight?
Not doing too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Just wanted to thank you again for coming on with us.
Hey, it's no problem. This should be fun.
Yeah, I just wanted to just have a regular conversation. That's how I do it. Ask you a couple questions and just talk some gaming. So, topic of gaming, obviously. What got you into your gaming, like your first JRPG and stuff like that?
So I actually started gaming when I was about 3, and that was with the original Super Mario Brothers. But my first JRPG was actually Final Fantasy VII when I was about 6.
Nice. Me, I started my first Final Fantasy was actually Mystic Quest. I
Oh,
only
nice.
only knew it as Mystic Quest. I didn't know it was a Final Fantasy till later on. And Final Fantasy, once I played 7, it just took my breath away, and I was just sucked into the entire Final Fantasy universe, and I just can't get away from it.
I feel you. It is. It has that power over a lot of people. It's a very revolutionary game. So it's not surprising to find that a lot of people in the U.S. even their first JRPG was Final Fantasy VII. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm actually the only one within the podcast that like 7. I'm surrounded by 6 fans. I love all the Final Fantasies. The one I least enjoy, I'd probably say is 13.
Yeah, I agree.
Not
That's probably
not
my least favorite as well.
nice. I was actually going to ask you that. So one question down. Not because of the linearity either, because 10 is actually pretty linear. It's just I'm big with the music. I love Nobuo, and none of the music really hit. None of the characters really hit with me either. And the story just, I'm not sure it didn't hit. I know people say lightning's a female cloud, which I mean I kind of agree to an extent, but I don't know. It just didn't hit it for me. I tried the second one also, and I didn't even give the third a chance, so I really can't speak on that one.
So a lot of people don't like my explanation for why I didn't like 13. A lot of it had to do with the linearity. Now, I have to say that Final Fantasy X is up there, probably tied with 7 as one of my favorite games of all time, and it's very linear. But the presentation of the linearity is what got me. I felt like 10 had this world that just felt real, whereas 13 kind of felt like I was on platforms with things in the background going on, but the main part of it was in those hallways, and it felt like a 40-hour tutorial, and I didn't really care for that structure. And it just there was something I didn't really care for. All of the characters I liked Zaz. I liked Lightning to an extent. I do see the comparisons with her being a female Cloud. I think she does set herself apart from other characters, but 13 just didn't grasp me, and I didn't really like the information being presented in the way that it was, because a lot of the time in the game, the data logs were like the big source of information, and the story itself told through the characters was more wrapping around what was being told in the data logs. And that for me just kind of, I'm a very visual and sound person. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to be told the story from the characters and not have to, like, if I'm reading a book, I want to read a book. If I'm playing a game, I want to play the game and get the story that way. So for me, 13, that's where it kind of lacked for me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that explanation at all. I can actually agree with that, like 100%. uh, Regarding battle systems, I mean, I'm not. I've only played a bit of 10-2, 10 being my favorite battle system. Just how easily you could switch in the party in and out. What would you say is your favorite battle system in the series?
So it's tough because I really like 7's ATB. I really like 10's conditional turn-based battle system. But then you have remakes, action-based combat with the ATB mixture, and I'm gonna have to say that it's probably still 10 with the rotating characters, the sphere grid and stuff. It's always been a system that I really loved, and I will always love traditional turn-based RPGs and ATB-based RPGs. But I do have a soft spot for action, so I would say it's probably a tie between 10 and 7 remakes combat system.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you can't vote out 7 in that scenario
No.
too. I also don't mind Final Fantasy Tactics, which is one of my favorite games of all time as well. So
Oh, War.
tactics-based combat is great for me too.
Yeah, War. I love War of the Lions. I mean, if you're gonna play tactics, I believe War of the Lions is probably the best way to play it. Just
The
like with
only
that.
the only thing I don't like about War of the Lions is that they removed the best line in the entire game, and that is blame yourself or God. They took that out, and I felt like that line was perfect for Final Fantasy Tactics.
That is a fantastic line. Now, as far as music goes, I live and breathe Final Fantasy, and you actually seem to love it just as much, probably even more than I do. You're actually a big inspiration to the podcast and myself. So I just want to thank you again.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate that. That kind of stuff means a lot to me. I've always wanted to be that person in the community, and it's nice to hear, to be honest.
it's great. Like everybody, like I said, we're a newer podcast. I'm a newer at this, so it's great to see that everybody's welcoming me with open arms so far. Someone of your stature, you know what I mean? You have so many fans and stuff like that, and it's great to see how welcoming everybody is. So I appreciate that also.
Well, the thing is, like, and I try to stress this a lot. I'm just a normal person. I mean, I think a lot of people see channel growth and they see size and they think this is. I want everybody to know that this is an attainable thing for anybody. I started out. I had 2 failed channels, and I'm just a normal guy trying to make it on a social media platform. And I'm nobody special. Like I just want to point that out to people that, like, anybody can do this. It just takes determination, and you get what you put into it. And that's why I don't. It doesn't matter for me the size of the podcast. It doesn't matter for me the size of the channel. Like, if I believe in you, and or I think that sometimes I just I want to give people a chance no matter what it is that they do. And being on podcasts, I think is great to help people out or just have fun and talk Final Fantasy. That's what it's all about, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's fantastic that you think that. um, so how do you feel about the approach they took with the second part of the remake? I at first I was very confused, but I thought of like the whole how there's maybe a second timeline now. How do you feel with
So
their
this is
approach with it?
this is a tough one for me because I feel like what I say is gonna be. So I gotta say that I don't necessarily like the new direction that it's taking. For me, alternate timelines and fate aren't like tangible things for humans
Kinda cop
to.
out a little bit.
Yeah. It's like a catch-all. Like, so for me, I used to want to be a writer.
Mhm.
And I think
Same,
one of the
same.
hardest things, I say this all the time, I think one of the hardest things to do is tell a realistic story in a fantasy setting and make it believable. And I think when you introduce things like fate and timelines, it's hard for we as humans to grasp that concept. And you can find ways of looking at those things in kind of a meta narrative sense, but it's hard from the surface level to be able to see those things and grasp them as a concept for the average person. And that's why I don't really care for that direction type. It seems like a catch-all. Like if they write themselves into a corner, they could just say time travel or timeline. It's a different timeline, so it doesn't affect us. But the fans see it. Like that's where I don't know. It's hard to explain in the right words that I want to say. I don't necessarily think that it is going to be a crash and burn failure. I want to wait to see how the story plays out and what they do with it. And if it's really good, I'll admit that it's really good. But for me personally, I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach. And I will say that I have not been overly positive about it.
Yeah.
I've tried to be. I don't like it as a concept, so it's hard for me to. I don't want to say fake, but it's hard for me to be fake about how I feel about the game.
Yeah, it's. I get what you're saying. Like I said, I'm kind. I mean, I like it, but I'm kind of at a crossroads with it because I don't know with Final Fantasy VII because it was like not my first because we discussed Mr. Quest was my first. It's just, I guess I want to like it because I don't want to see it as a failure because just what it's like, the impact it's had on my life, you know, and I'm just hoping they take the right route. And I got a question coming up later that I really was eager to talk to you about, and I probably think you know what it is if it's one of the big scenes that happens. And
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what scene you're talking about.
yeah, yeah. So I'm just I'll actually I'll get to it. I'll get to it now.
Okay,
With
sounds good.
the I don't. I mean, it's been years, but there's also new people that are going to be playing the game that haven't played it before. I kind of I don't know. Do you think I should kind of skip around it and kind of not spoil, or I don't know how
So,
to
yeah, I
really
would say probably the
go
best bet
about
would be
this.
to give context clues so I know what you're talking about, but so that people that don't know don't get it spoiled for them. I'm assuming you're talking about a certain character being alive that's
Yeah.
not usually okay. All right, go ahead. Go ahead with your question then, because I already know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just curious on if a certain flower girl was able to if a certain flower girl was able to continue the journey at a part where she wasn't able to in the original, how would you feel about that? I honestly, I would. I think that's really the whole drive for Cloud at the second part of the story, and I would kind of, I wouldn't look at as the game as a failure, but I would be very, very upset if what is supposed to happen doesn't happen, just because of the fact it drives actually the entire new Avalanche. I call them new Avalanche. Um, even some of the Avalanche, the original, are still like kicking it
So,
from when the plane falls from the original.
so obviously,
I didn't confuse you, did I?
no, you're good. I know what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
so with that scenario, nobody wants that to happen to their favorite characters, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't actively want a character to meet that fate in the way that it's a malicious intent.
Yeah.
I want that character to meet that fate because of the impact it has on the story, and I don't see how they could write it to properly change that fate and still give the driving narrative that they had in the original.
Mhm.
And with that being said, I feel that way about any character that doesn't meet that fate in that way because one of the main themes of the original was loss. It was dealing with that. It's how I learned as even a young child that, not everything happens the way that you want it to, including loved ones. And that's a powerful message to send. And that's actually one of the messages they wanted to send with that scene, was that if something happens to someone that you love in that way,
Mhm.
there's no magic fairy that's going to change it. There's no magic ability that's going to change it. No item that's going to bring that fate in a different way.
Not even a Phoenix Down.
Yeah, not even a Phoenix Down. And that's why I feel like changing it is going to be a difficult thing to do, because so many people realized what it meant to have that fate happen to a character they love. And it's hard for me to fathom how they could change it, make it meaningful still, and keep the essence of what the original was, which is the whole point of this remake, I feel, was to amplify the original's ability to tell a story.
Mm.
And so far, if those characters do not meet that fate, I feel like it's a lost opportunity to tell this story in a modern way and still keep those elements.
Yeah, like with Barrett, like with uh Wedge, I believe we weren't sure what happened to him at Shinra headquarters. I believe Biggs is the one that we see in bed, right?
Yeah.
And Jessie, I don't think we know what happens to her. And that was
See, what's
Barrett's
interesting about that,
main drive too, besides Marlene.
yeah, what's interesting about the Jessie thing is we don't know, because we see her glove and her headband next to Biggs on the bed. Like, it's on the nightstand next to Biggs.
Mm.
And it's like, did someone give him that?
Or is he taking care of
Did he find
him?
her and grab that? Or is there another bed in that room and the developers didn't want to show her, but they wanted to tease her? And that's, I
Mhm.
think, the big question right there.
Yeah, because I love Biggs, Wedge, and Jessie, even though they weren't a big part in the original. I just always had like a soft spot for them.
And
And
see, that's another thing about the whole changing fate deal. I think a lot of people, like I said, nobody wants this to happen to their favorite characters, but we know why it happened. And for
yeah,
them to change that with those three characters, it takes all the impact out of what they stood for.
exactly.
They were willing to sacrifice everything to make a better world. And if they don't make that sacrifice, even later in the original, Barrett has a moment where he talks about them, and it's, I think, besides Shinra and besides Sephiroth, I think their deaths are one of the reasons why Barrett has the drive that he has to complete his mission, because his friends did make the ultimate sacrifice. So
Exactly.
for me, it's all about the character motive. And if the characters don't suffer, what drive do they have besides the shonen story arc of saving the world?
Plot.
Like, it's the plot. They're supposed to save the world, but how does that make it different than any other story if it's just the same as any other story? Like, if that's the
I get
proper
that.
way I should say it.
I get that. Like I'm curious when we get to Cosmo Canyon. That is one of my favorite scenes when they're all sitting around the bonfire and they're all talking. And I'm curious if Barrett's gonna know if Barrett's gonna know what happened to them, if they're still alive or not. Because that when he's talking about them all visiting, how Avalanche was born in Cosmo Canyon, and talking about them all visiting it once the job was done, it's not going to have the same impact if he knows that that it had. Because that's, I don't know, for me, one of the biggest scenes is um when you're leaving Midgar for the first time and you're walking out the gate. That, and I don't know, Cosmo Canyon, just because the way the music sets it up and stuff like that. I'm a very, I guess nostalgic person, and you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah,
the
no,
impact.
like, so, and I want to touch on nostalgia too, because it's like, a lot of people think that the reason why I don't like the story direction is because of nostalgia, and that is part of it. I will give them that. It is hard to let go of something that transformed my life in the way that the original Final Fantasy VII did. So it is hard for me to see massive changes. Now, the standard changes like wall market and new characters and stuff like that, I loved all of that. I loved every minute of that. And Chapter 9 was like my favorite chapter in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the changing of the elements of the story that really don't sit well with me, but I'm willing to give it a chance. And like I've probably shown on my channel for a while, I've been less than receptive to those things. I'm trying to get better about that, by the way, guys. But it is very hard to come to terms with what they're doing right now. And if it turns out to be a ruse and everything is in an alternate timeline, will I like that? No, but I would rather that the base timeline stay the same and they show kind of a what if scenario than actually having these timelines converge and a certain character actually coming into the main timeline that wasn't already there. So I will say that nostalgia does play a big part in my feelings on the game and the series going forward, but it's not 100% the reasons, I guess.
I think Bugenhagen's going to have a bigger role than he had in the. I mean, he had a decent role in the original, but I think his role is going to expand a lot more.
Oh yeah, I think the timelines thing is definitely going to fall
under
his.
Around him, yeah.
Oh yeah, he's definitely Bugenhagen is definitely going to be the one that explains everything, and I think that's actually, I like that. I think that's a good way to do it.
Exactly.
Do I agree with what the story might be? Maybe not. But if it's presented through Bugenhagen, I don't think anybody will complain about that part of it.
And what are you most excited to see in the in the remake in part 2?
So if well, it depends on how far it goes.
Exactly. That's what I'm wondering, because disc 2 goes basically to the end.
I mean, other than, I don't even remember offhand where disc 2 ends. Is it somewhere around Great Glacier?
I believe. Is it after the little cuddle scene with Tifa and Cloud? I think it's maybe. I think it goes up to that point, and then you go into the Northern.
Yeah, it might be. You're right. I remember where the first disc ends, obviously, but the second disc and third disc are kind of up in the air for me.
I started playing it, so
and that's the thing too. We don't know. So with the whole fate thing and that being destroyed, we don't know if the game is even going to follow the locations and I mean, it'll follow the locations, but we don't know if it's going to follow every single path that the original did when it came to locations and stuff like that. It may be in a whole completely different order. And so it's hard to gauge what I'm excited to see in part 2 because I just don't know what's there. But if I had to pick a scene that I am excited for, I think it's the realization scene with Red and Seto, where he realizes what's actually going on and who his father really was. I think that moment is probably the second most powerful moment in the game. Well, I'll say third. I'll say that's the third most powerful moment in the game because obviously the end of disc 1 is the most powerful. I think number 2 is definitely the Nibelheim reactor incident.
Yep.
And then I would say number 3 is the Cosmo Canyon scene. But I'm also really excited for the Nibelheim reactor. That's my favorite scene in the entire game. All 3 of them. And because of that, it's like you realize that Cloud is the unreliable narrator. And that's what is so powerful about those 3 scenes because they're all the same scene told in different ways from different perspectives.
On that day 5 years ago, one of my favorite tracks. That
exactly.
On Anxious Hearts, that and which gets me to my next question. My favorite track in probably the whole game. I'm more of a melodic fan. I love the battle themes and stuff like that. Battle on the Big Bridge, one of my favorite themes, even though it's not 7. Holding My Thoughts in My Heart. When you're traveling to I believe Mount Coral, right? When you're traveling through onto the bridge and holding my thoughts and my heart is playing. The sun shining in the distance. That is one of the most impact. I don't know why. Just to me, just the music playing, it's just a very impactful scene to me because you're with these people that you're. I can't really explain it, but he's with these people that he got thrown with because he was doing a job for him, and now he's growing closer to them, and it's just a ragtag bunch of people, and they're on this journey, and it's just like a very like emotional scene for me. So, what would you say your favorite? Maybe not only in 7, but your favorite theme in Final Fantasy. It could be 7, it could be whichever.
Oh man, that's tough because Uematsu is
Yeah,
one of my favorites of all time. In fact, I would say he's probably number 1 or 2 as my favorite composers.
same.
So his body of work is so large, it's hard to even pick a favorite. But if I had to go with my 2 favorite songs on any OST, it's gonna be To Xanarkand from 10 and probably Listen to the Cries of the Planet from 7. And the reason for that, for 7, is that Listen to the Cries of the Planet is such a powerful song and such a powerful moment.
Mhm.
And every time I hear it, I can picture that scene and I can picture the location in my head, and all these memories just flood into my mind about that location in the game, and it's just such a powerful impact on me and has been since I heard it the first time.
Yeah, I honestly I agree with you with both of those, but To Xanarkand I believe is his best work to date.
Oh,
It's
yeah, that
such
song, oh my
that
god, man. I
that shed a tear at the end of Final Fantasy X.
oh,
Just
I know.
that drives the whole emotion. Like I don't even think uh I don't even think I can watch the ending to that game without shedding a tear just because that song is such an impact. And it just drives the entire all the emotion just it's just
I feel you. So I
oh.
heard I wouldn't say it's a remix, but it's more of it's an alternate version of To Xanarkand, and it was on like a mix of Final Fantasy like remixes and songs like that. And It was such a beautiful version, and I was listening to it in my car, and I started to remember the first time I played Final Fantasy X, which came at a very, very rough time in my life. And I sat in my car and I played that song on repeat in my driveway like 10 times. And I was so overcome with emotion. Like I almost cried listening to it in my driveway because for whatever reason, whenever I hear that song, it brings me back to that time and how 10 helped pull me out of that time. So I will forever say that that's probably my favorite song of all time when it comes to Final Fantasy and really video games in general.
That's funny that you say that. Not funny that it was the hardest time of your life, but Final Fantasy X, somebody very special to me in my life. That was the last Final Fantasy they gifted me before they passed on. And that's another reason why Two Generkin is a big impact on me. Um,
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
oh, it's fine. I'm happy you got through that hard time in your life.
Same with you.
Um, Now some characters in the remake, their personality are slightly tweaked. To me, I like the comedic side they gave Red 13 Nanaki. Um, I love the quips he hits Barrett with at the end. That end scene when you're driving the bike down the highway, that it's so good. I was standing up playing that. It was so good. The rush of energy I got. I
Are we
still
allowed to swear?
well yeah of course.
Okay. When he calls Barrett a 300-pound sack of shit, I lost
Cried.
my mind. Bro, I legit laughed so hard out loud. And I had my headphones in on my PS4 controller, and my wife was like sitting next to me on the couch, and I just started maniacally laughing. And
Yeah,
she's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I told her what happened, and she started laughing, and it was like it was such a funny moment.
Same. That's actually my fiance. Actually, I turned to look at her. She's looking at me with the weirdest expression on her face because I put my headset on. Also, and she was just like, her and her daughter was just looking at me like what is wrong with you? Especially the scene when Bear tells him to smile and he goes to try to smile.
Yes.
They're just looking at me like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, it's Nanaki.
Dude, and honestly, I think that is the best part of the remake. It's not the battle system. I would make an argument that the music is up there too, but it's not the battle system, it's not the graphics, it's the characters. They were so well done. I cannot stress enough how people were worried about the English voice actors before we found out who they were, and even after we found out who they were. Some people were kind of, really against it, but oh my god, did they blow it out of the water. They completely slayed those performances. They were so good, man. Like, I cannot get over how good the English voice cast was for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Especially, shout out to my friend John Eric Bentley for playing one hell of a Barrett, because good God, man, you deserve awards.
Oh, cool. I was gonna say that Barrett in Red 13, just absolutely amazing. They were already one of my favorite characters, not only in 7, but in the entire franchise. Of course, Sephiroth's my number one. I don't know why, but he was always, since I was a kid. Just I always like kind of looked up to him. Him and Squall were always like my number one and
I
two.
love Squall.
But I love, he's so good. I don't know, when I was a kid, I just looked up to him so much. I don't know. I had a similar jacket to him, and just oh, I don't know. It's funny.
For me,
But
I always like resonated with Squall because he was kind of a loner, kind of a quiet guy, and that's how I was most of my school years. So playing 8 was like perfect for me because it was like, here's this really quiet guy that doesn't really want to do what he has to do, but he's gonna do it anyway. And I always loved Squall.
Renoa, I think the word is my waifu. That's the word, right?
Oh yeah,
It's
100%.
Renoa and Aerith, Eris. I don't know what the fans out there like to prefer. Um, but going back to that's one thing that I believe a lot of the fans are like cross between, is a lot of fans want her to, to go on, but some fans want it to be be the way it was. But I don't know. Like, going back to that a little bit, I hope they stick with what happened, just because of the impact. But
I do too. Same here. And I think Brianna White will play that scene really well. I think she'll nail it, to be honest.
yeah, the I can't believe how fantastic the voice actors are yet again. It just
Well,
I love
and the
Martin,
character
but
the character writing was so good. Like, you know, whenever you take characters and you amplify their personalities, and then you add things like swearing and humor and stuff like that. And obviously the original had swearing and humor and stuff, but I feel like the way Remake was written, the jokes hit, the swearing is perfect. The the overall atmosphere of the characters is just so well done that it's like you're playing the original again, but their personalities are like 10 times what they were before. And I think these are the most perfect renditions of these characters that we've ever seen. Like, for example, when Aerith and Cloud are climbing through the junk, or the whatever you want to call it, I believe in Sector 5.
out of the church.
Yeah, after they leave the church. Um, and the ladder breaks on Aerith, and you hear her say shit. And it's the second most perfect swear in the entire game. The first one, though, and I hate it because it's part of my least favorite part of the game, but my favorite part, or my favorite swear in the entire game, is when Cloud is fighting the Arbiters, and he like does the move where he slashes down and the Arbiter blocks his sword block, but Cloud's still kind of there, and he says, "Bring it, bitch." And dude, I did not like the ending, but good God, was that swear perfect.
Yeah, I love I'm so mixed with it, but I love it so much, but I'm just so I can't really describe it.
It's hard to discredit the game just for the ending
Because they did
because
some stuff so well.
because the rest of the game is so great. Other than like the textures, which I did take issue with, the game is so great, right? And it's like
And they didn't even update that.
you don't want to discredit the whole game because of the ending, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen. It could all work out and be great. I just don't personally like the ending, but that's just me. But the game, they did such a good job with the writing, and I wish that I wish I could articulate it better besides just saying it's really good. But good God, it's good, man. I just, you know.
We only have a couple more questions. But I have a question from a fan. Actually, I have somebody in my Kupokast group. He's a huge fan. He was so excited when I said you were coming on the podcast. This is a shout out to Nicholas Coppinger. He wanted to know what you think the story of the remake, how it will play out. We kind of answered this a little bit, but I just wanted to get his question out there.
So thank you, Nicholas, for the question. I appreciate you as a fan. So I think that a lot of the future games will play out in a similar fashion to part one. I think there will be parts that will be different, obviously. We don't know what's going to happen with Avalanche and Wutai because that's like a big connection thing now. I think there's going to be a lot of compilation material incorporated. Hopefully that's done in a really good way. But I think story beats wise, I think some things have to change, right? Most of the time when you introduce alternate timelines and changing fate and stuff like that, that plays out in the story, right? And whether that is a good or bad thing, it's likely to happen. So at some point, I believe that the character that we talked about being alive earlier is going to make an appearance in our timeline. And that being said, I think that has the potential to completely alter the way a lot of events occur in the game, depending on when that character comes into play. Because I feel like you don't set that up, you don't show that as a big emphasis if you're not going to have it play out, right? So, God, I hate to say this, but I really think that at some point that character is going to join Cloud and they're going to fight it out with Sephiroth. And that's going to be how this plays out. I don't see that character being brought back into the fold if they are not going to be a major character going forward. It would make no sense to show him.
Would it be a fair assumption that we're thinking about the same person?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Fair assumption. Okay. Only two more questions. It was fantastic having you.
I appreciate it.
I feel like I'm talking to someone I knew for years. Like this is a great conversation. Hopefully, I can get you on. You're not busy in the future, and I can have you on again.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%.
But two more questions we have. How do you feel about the direction Square Enix is taking with the FF franchise? And how do you feel about the Final Fantasy 16 trailer? I personally I like it. I like them taking new directions with each installment, and I like this gritty type of, I don't know if I would call it Game of Thrones or Witcher or Dragon's Dogma type direction, but this new direction they're going back. It's kind of back to the medieval. But what was the quote they said was they're not going to rely on the crystals or something like that. What was the quote? First, FF16.
I believe they said something to the effect of the crystals will shape our history no more or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So how do you feel about the direction they're taking, and how do you feel about the Final Fantasy 16 trailer?
So, like I said earlier, I started with Final Fantasy VII. So I started with the ATB system, and then I played Tact 8, and then I played Tactics, and so I've been around for a lot of the different battle systems that have come and gone in Final Fantasy, and the story elements and the futuristic settings, the medieval settings, the steampunk settings, all of these different settings and stuff. And I believe every game of Final Fantasy is different and it's unique and it's got its own elements, and those are great. But I am not opposed to the action shift. I believe we're in a time in gaming where action games are more profitable, they're more accepted by a wide range of gamers, and that's, I think, what they kind of want, is they want to bring in people that have never played Final Fantasy, which was their whole goal with 15. They wanted a game that would bring in old fans, new fans, and action combat seems to be the way that they want to go with this series, obviously. And I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a great thing that they're trying to innovate. Obviously, wasn't a fan of 15's combat, but I did like the game. Remake's combat is damn near perfect. So I liked what I saw with 16. I like the setting. I like the combat. I like how the characters look. And I'm completely fine with the way they're going. I will always love turn-based. I will always love tactics games. But I'm not opposed to innovation, which I think is one of the keystones of this franchise, is that they innovate. And 16, I'm excited for it for a multitude of reasons. But I'd say my top 3 reasons are: I really like the way the combat looks. I can't think of his name right now, but Ryota Suzuki, the guy that's working on the combat of Final Fantasy 16, is the guy that worked on Devil May Cry 5. I'm really excited for that because I loved Devil May Cry 5. The music sounds great. It sounds like Soken. I'm almost 100% sure that it's Soken doing the soundtrack for 16, who does the soundtrack for 14, and it's absolutely incredible. And number 3, Yoshi P, Takai, and Kazutoyo Meihiro are on this game. And Meihiro worked under my favorite writer of all time, Yasumi Matsuno. And I love that style of writing. They worked on Tactics, 12, and Vagrant Story together. I love what they do. They worked on the Ivalice raid for 14. I am absolutely excited for 16 because of those 3 men right there.
Nice. I can't wait for it myself. I'm not really good with names of. I mean, I know Nobuo, Yoshitaka Mano, Tetsuya Nomura, but I'm not really good with like writers and stuff like that. Like I get confused with some names. But most of the team that worked on 14 is working on 16, though, correct?
Yeah. So Meihiro and Takai left 14 after Heavensward.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Meihiro did. I know Takai did, but I believe Meihiro left after Heavensward or maybe after Shadowbringers. And Yoshi P's obviously the director of 14. He's the producer of 16. And a lot of the team, I think, from 14 that has left are now on 16. So that's one of the big reasons I'm excited, because I'm a huge fan of 14.
Yeah, I love 14. Actually, I got to get it back into it. I haven't played it in a bit because I have so many games in my backlog. I'm going back and playing a bunch of JRPGs I haven't played. Like I just got into Star Ocean, Suikoden. I just started playing, which I love. I love it.
I love Suikoden, by the way. I started playing it a while back, and it is incredible.
I just started playing that on my Vita because I love my Vita because I have my Final Fantasy 1 through 10 on it, and I get a lot of my JRPGs. One game I know everybody clowns me for it. I haven't played. I gotta play it. Is Legend of Dragoon. It's my next big game. I'm gonna.
Oh
play.
Yeah, you got to play it for sure.
What besides Final Fantasy VII Remake, what are the future JRPG? I know you talked about the new what Eating Chronicles, I believe.
Eiyuden Chronicles.
Yeah, I believe I was watching. So like I said, I'm a big fan of yours, and uh, besides that, I know you talked about Shin Megami Tensei 5. Um, what future JRPG projects are you most excited for?
Persona
Besides,
6 for sure.
oh,
Uh,
I just started playing Persona Royal 5 Royale again. I'm
oh
actually
my god, Persona 5
love it.
Royal. Oh, it was so good. Oh man,
We'll be here for another hour if we start talking about Persona.
I'm
Oh,
probably going to get roasted so hard for this, but Persona 5 Royal might have edged its way in as my favorite game of all time.
not at all. That's game. It's fantastic. Oh,
Like it is
the music,
so
everything.
good.
Love it.
I listen to the OST all the time. That's how obsessed I am with it.
Listen, I'm gonna get roasted for this, but I have a whole playlist of songs I go to bed to. I have a whole soundtrack. It's called Good Night Until Tomorrow. um, some is it's Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Suikoden, Chrono Trigger, a little bit of Skyrim thrown in, a little bit of Persona thrown in also, Super Mario RPG, a bunch of stuff thrown in. I listen to it when I go to bed.
God, I could
So,
talk about Chrono Trigger music all the time.
I gotta go back. I gotta finish it. I love Chrono Trigger. I gotta play Chrono Cross. I haven't played Chrono Cross yet. I gotta I gotta play it.
Oh man, I literally you could probably put Chrono Trigger in my top 5 OSTs of all time, and its composer Yasunori Mitsuda, you could put him up there in my top 5 composers of all time. He is so good.
I I'm a huge. How do you feel about survival horror?
So I have a love-hate relationship with survival horror. I love Resident Evil 4. I
Mhm.
really like Resident Evil 2 remake and
Love
the
it.
original Resident Evil 2. But I feel like every other Resident Evil game is kind of hit or miss for me.
Yeah,
Um, I've never been really big into the genre. I respect it. It's just they're just not the games that I typically play.
same. I besides Resident Evil, and I'm a huge silent. I love Akira Yamamoto. That's what I was getting to. He's one of my favorite composers. I love Silent Hill.
Silent Hill music is
Um,
great.
not, anything past 4 though, I'm not too big into. 1, 2, 4 is fantastic, but yeah, Akira Yamamoto is definitely one of my favorite composers. Um, but I don't want to keep you too long. It's been about. It's
Oh no, we're fine. We can keep going.
okay. That's fine with me. I don't have any more questions, so um, uh, let's see. What other? I mean, what other games you're excited for besides Persona 6 and Final Fantasy 7? I know you talked about Shinigami Tensei. Did I say that?
So
Did I say that right? I feel like I'm not saying it
yeah,
right.
yeah, you're saying it right. Um, I'm really excited for Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon.
I
Oh
love
man,
Yakuza.
I'm so stoked for Yakuza 7.
Is that
Oh
the
my
one you? Is
god.
that the one you posted about the turn-based one? That's not.
Yes.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah,
I
I can't wait
love
for that.
Yakuza.
I'm also really excited for a lot of the games that I was excited for are already out. Tony Hawk, Crash Bandicoot. Um, but I'm excited for Cyberpunk.
I
Uh,
was just gonna. You took the words out of my mouth.
yeah, I'm excited for Cyberpunk. It's on my radar for sure. I'm gonna be picking it up day one. So
I just it took me a while. I got The Witcher last year. It was on sale, and it was so immense. It was so hard for me to wrap my head around. And I finally a couple weeks ago, I finally was able to like get past all the items in it and just how massive the world is. And I finally got to sit down and actually play it and get into it. Oh, I'm in love with it.
so
And
I kind of have a weird relationship with Witcher 3, and my friend Craig is constantly trying to get me to play it. So I own the game. I have played all the way to the Bloody Baron quests, and I just can't get into it.
that's how
I know that's blasphemy, but
I don't know. I
it's
can totally agree with you. I
it's
was.
so hard for me to get into it. I wish I could. I want to so bad, but there's just I don't know what it is. There's something about it that's hard for me to sit down and play the hell out of it.
That's me with Final Fan I hate to say that, but with Final Fantasy 15, I just reinstalled it. I'm gonna play it tonight after I watch Advent Children Complete in honor of talking with you. Um, I love it, but I I don't know. I love what it's about. It doesn't hold my attention. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because I had other games I was excited to play. Uh, but I don't know why Final Fantasy 15. It's the only Final Fantasy besides 13 that really couldn't hold my attention. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are hit and miss on it. To be honest, like some say it's the greatest Final Fantasy ever, some say it's the worst Final Fantasy ever. Some are in between. It's a very mixed bag when it comes to 15. So I'm not surprised by any opinion that I see on 15 anymore.
I don't. I mean, neither am I, because I see a lot. I'm on a lot of forums on Facebook about the Final Fantasy forums, and I mean, I don't I'm not a hater or not. I respect everybody's opinion with Final Fantasy. I love the debate, especially the Final Fantasy 6 fans. I'll debate with them all day about 7.
I feel you.
But, I don't know how people could think Final Fantasy 13 is the greatest Final Fantasy. I don't
Yeah,
and I don't understand
I
how
have
I don't have sorry.
I have a hard time understanding it too, but I respect it. You know.
Of course, I respect all fans. I'm not gonna hate on nobody for anything. That's what makes everybody different, and that's what makes the world go around. I mean, I love sitting here, like, talking with you is fantastic, and I could talk about Final Fantasy for days,
I feel you. Me too.
and I just don't know how people can say Final Fantasy 13 is the greatest Final Fantasy. I don't know. Um, my first Persona was 3. Um, I Just whenever we have to go, just let me know. We can
Okay.
stop talking.
Persona 5 Royal was actually my first.
My favorite is probably one of my favorite is Gold. I love Persona 4 Golden.
I
That
need to finish that game. I have it.
silent
I've gotten
so
about
good.
10 hours into it and I need to keep going, but I started playing 14 again last month and I have been almost playing that nonstop. So it's hard for me right now to get into another super long RPG because I'm trying to get to Shadowbringers.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna put some time on 14. I'm gonna probably start playing it again on my PS4. Get
What server are you on?
I honestly I haven't played it in probably a year, so I'll get back to you on that.
Well, I'm on Primal
I have you on.
Excalibur.
Uh,
So if you end up being on Primal or Primal and then on Excalibur or really any other world, hit me up.
okay, I definitely will. Primal Excalibur.
Yep.
All right, sounds good. What was I saying? I feel like I've known you. I feel talking. I feel like I've known you for years. You're so down to earth.
Hey, like I
Uh,
said earlier, I am
just
literally just a
I
dude
know.
behind a camera. That is
Of
literally all I am.
course. I don't mean to like sound like
Oh no, you're
but
good. I'm still getting used to this. You know, it's been 2 years and I'm still getting used to the whole hey, you're soldier first class thing, you know? Like
yeah.
it's so weird still.
Uh, this guy are sick. I wish they kept that.
Yeah, me too. That would have been sweet.
I know they should have kept that just for the little Easter egg. That would have been good. Um, as far as Final Fantasy goes, again, what do you think the most underrated soundtrack is? For me, I actually sat and listened to it the other day. I say Final Fantasy 3 soundtrack is fantastic.
I would
That and
say
5, I believe, is pretty underrated in my opinion. Those are
so.
probably my favorite.
I almost never hear anybody talking about Tactics or 12's soundtrack, and I absolutely love both of those
12 is
soundtrack.
great.
So I would have to say Tactics is probably the most underrated in my opinion.
Yeah, Sweepy. My buddy Sweepy, who I do this podcast. I love taxis myself, to be honest. I would like a nice. I can only imagine a remake of that. That would be good. That
Oh
would be
yeah, I would
fantastic.
add.
What would you
Oh,
would be fantastic. Besides that, though, what would you think? What would you like to see remade?
so that's a tough one
Eight.
because
I lo-
I
I'm a
I really think the one that would probably need it the most would
probably
probably
two.
be would probably yeah, 2 would be a good one, but I feel like 8 would probably be the best candidate for a remake.
That's
Um,
funny. I feel the same way. Two or
I
eight.
I feel like it's so controversial because of the battle system and the junction system
Exactly.
that
I
if they
feel
were to remake the game in a way that satisfied with combat and maybe tune up the story a little bit to make more sense or to because let's all admit the orphanage thing was kind of cheap. But I think 8 would be a good candidate for a remake. 6 too, also 6 would be good for a remake.
nine. I love nine. I don't know why.
9,
I love nine.
nine's also pretty good.
Nine gets a lot of love though. Two and eight, I think, gets the most hate, both because of the battle systems. And
Yeah, definitely.
eight, I don't understand why everybody hates the junction and the draw system so much. In my opinion, I'm a heavy grinder. I like to grind a lot and get my characters level up. So if you're gonna grind, regardless, just draw while you're doing it.
Well, and the thing with 8 is that you don't want to grind. The more you grind, the harder the game is.
Oh yeah, because the enemies they scale, right?
Yeah, so like that's what's so funny about 8 is that like the more you level, the harder the game gets. So
I guess
it's kind of a unique concept.
I never really even. I've never all these years. I've never. Wow. I've never even thought about that.
Yeah, it's a weird not a I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of RPGs that do it, but I've personally not played a game where like if you're level 50, you're going to fight stuff in beginning areas that match your level and are harder than they were when you were level 10.
Yeah, because usually they just scale depending on where you are in
Yeah.
the map.
Yeah,
Like if
usually
you're in
you
the
go
beginning
back to a
place,
starting area and you completely obliterate everything. Like look at 7. If
you
you
go
go
back to
back to the
Midgar, ruined.
yeah, if you go back to the area around Midgar, you are just a god compared to everything else there.
I tried fighting just for shits and giggles. Excuse my language. I uh I turned on because I have it on PS4. I turned on the little cheats and I went to go fight the Midgar Zolom. Even now with the cheats, it just wipes me out. Just wipes everybody out. I'm hitting it with all these limit breaks and it just one hits everybody.
Yeah, that
There's
fight is difficult.
gotta it hits for like over 1,000 damage. I forget which move it is, but it hits for like over 1,000 damage.
Beta.
Yep, beta. And wow, you're good. You were good.
One of the most OP attacks in the game.
And this is why they call him Soldier First Class, ladies and gentlemen. He's at the top of his ranks. Damn, it was great to have you on the podcast. I don't want
Hey,
to.
no,
I don't
no
want to keep
problem,
you.
man.
I don't want to keep you too long. But everybody, listen. Go and check out his YouTube. He's on Twitter. You will not regret it. He's one of the
Well,
most
you
knowledgeable
you
people about.
might, but still give it a try.
I don't think you'll regret it, but I guess he thinks you will, but I don't think you will. He's one of the most knowledgeable people with Final Fantasy and other JRPGs. It was an honor to have him on the podcast tonight. So thank you so much. I hope to be able to speak to you again, and I will definitely hit you up about um, Final Fantasy 14, and hopefully we can play that together.
For sure. And it was an honor to be on the podcast. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I hope to speak to You again.